Superman's body hit the ground, and no one knew why. The Justice League blamed the Avengers. The Avengers pointed fingers at Dr. Doom. But Batman wasn't buying it. He found something in the wreckage, something that shouldn't exist. A shattered piece of Iron Man's arc reactor, with alien tech inside. That's when he realized the real Tony Stark had been gone for months. It had been 8 months since the truce. The world had nearly crumbled under the pressure of cosmic collapse. A breach between dimensions had threatened to rip apart the fragile fabrics of reality. And in a rare moment of unity, Earth's greatest heroes stood together. The Avengers, the Justice League, and even rogue outliers like Dr. Doom and Lex Luthor agreed. Survival meant cooperation. At the center of this uneasy alliance stood 2 men, icons of their worlds. Superman, the paragon of virtue and hope. Iron Man, the futurist wrapped in armor and guilt. They didn't like each other, not entirely. Superman mistrusted Tony's ego, and Tony resented Clark's perfection. But they respected each other. That respect was enough to keep Earth intact. The post-war recovery was brutal. Entire cities had been pulled into dimensional vortexes. Time loops plagued regions of Europe, and the multiverse cracks left by Kang's invasion hadn't healed. They pulsed beneath the surface like scars ready to reopen. Together, Superman and Iron Man led joint missions, patching rifts and restoring order. Media dubbed them the Steel Twins. For the first time, the heroes of Earth worked from one command hub. Orbiting above the planet in the Watchtower helicarrier hybrid, Tony had co-engineered with Bruce Wayne. And then Tony began to change. It was subtle at first, minor decisions that raised eyebrows. He suggested abandoning rescue ops for statistical dead weight. He vetoed evacuations in low-resource zones. His sense of humor, once dry and cutting, became sterile. The spark in his eyes, that smirk he wore like armor, was gone. Bruce noticed. Always the observer, Batman wasn't one for assumptions. He documented patterns. Iron Man missed 2 closed-door briefings, which Tony never did. He failed to react when Flash made a callback joke from a past mission, a joke Tony himself had coined. He showed no interest in the tech upgrades from Shuri or Cyborg. He even ignored a direct challenge from Green Lantern, brushing it off without his usual wit. Bruce ran a shadow biometric scan on Tony during a strategy session. Heart rate erratic, thermal signatures slightly off, micro-expression latency delayed by fractions of a second, unnoticeable to most, but glaring to someone like him. He kept it to himself, for now. Meanwhile, Superman was burning out. His powers had been pushed beyond their limit, repairing the fractures in time-space. Every jump across dimensions took more from him. Lois begged him to rest, but Clark couldn't. Not while there was still danger. Not while people needed him. He trusted Tony to make the hard calls while he flew headfirst into chaos. If only he'd known what was waiting. On a cold evening over the North Atlantic, an alarm rippled through the Watchtower. A rift had torn open near Iceland, one they thought was sealed weeks ago. Civilians were trapped in what was described as a time fold, where seconds repeated endlessly. Superman was already in flight before the full debrief finished. He could handle it. He'd done it dozens of times. Tony gave the green light for the mission, then returned to analyzing data on phase resonance collapse. He barely glanced up as the Man of Steel flew to what would be his final mission. 6 minutes into the operation, the Watchtower lost contact with Superman. What returned from the feed was chaos. Civilians frozen in place, pulses of unstable radiation, and then a flash of light. And silence. When the portal stabilized enough for retrieval, Diana and Martian Manhunter went in. They found Clark's body, suspended mid-air, lifeless. His cape torn, chest scorched, eyes wide open. Superman was dead. The world stopped spinning. Grief surged like a shockwave through the hero networks. News anchors sobbed on live television. Nations declared mourning periods. Metropolis descended into silent disbelief. And in the center of the storm, Iron Man stood motionless, arms crossed, unreadable. "I told him it was unstable," he said quietly. He didn't listen. That should have been it. An accident, a tragedy, But Bruce didn't believe it. He'd seen the energy signature that laced Clark's wounds. It didn't match the rift. It matched Stark tech, specifically a rare discharge pattern Tony had developed for his repulsor prototypes. Top secret tech. Tech no one else should have had access to. The same tech that appeared in fragments at the scene, buried in debris, partially cloaked. And worse, the timestamps from mission logs didn't match. The approval for the mission had come before the rift opened. As if someone knew it would happen. As if someone planned it. Bruce confronted Tony. Or the thing wearing Tony. The confrontation was quiet. No theatrics. No suits. Just two men in the empty watchtower hangar. Bruce asked one question. "Where were you during the Argus meeting last Friday?" Tony hesitated. He never hesitated. He answered, "With SWRD overseeing repairs." But that meeting had been canceled. Bruce had arranged it as bait. That's when Bruce knew. The man in front of him looked like Stark, sounded like Stark. But the soul, the improvisation, the guilt, the chaos, it was missing. What remained was a shell executing a script. The real Tony Stark was gone. Bruce didn't strike. Not yet. He needed proof. He needed allies. Superman was dead, but if Stark had been replaced, then it wasn't an accident. It was a hit. And if it was a hit, there was a war coming. He left without a word. No one noticed the silent rage beneath the cowl. Days later, Wonder Woman found a fragment of something buried in Superman's cape, a microchip, fused to alien polymer. It wasn't Kryptonian. It wasn't Stark tech either. It was both, a hybrid. And embedded within its code was a single repeating phrase in encrypted binary. Phase 1, eliminate constants. Superman had been a constant, unmovable, in the way, and he was only the first. Shock turned to silence. Superman's death wasn't just a tragedy, it was impossible. He wasn't supposed to die. Not like this. Not in a minor dimensional rupture. Not without a fight. The League had faced gods, devils, and multiversal warlords, and Clark always returned. But this time, there was no resurrection protocol, no last-minute miracle, no heartbeat left to restart. His body, though intact, bore the unmistakable signature of focused energy, burns, microscopic punctures, and cellular decay at a level that didn't match natural phenomena. It was surgical. It was designed. The world grieved in waves. Metropolis held vigils that lasted for weeks. Batman and Wonder Woman were rarely seen. Diana remained by Clark's side until the memorial was over, standing guard in silence, mace at her back. But Bruce disappeared completely, working deep beneath the watchtower. He wasn't mourning. He was hunting. Across the planet, tensions began to crack the foundation of the uneasy alliance between the Justice League and the Avengers. The public didn't understand how the Man of Steel could be lost on what should have been a routine mission. Headlines called it sabotage. Protesters blamed SWRD for sending him in alone. Questions spread faster than answers. And at the center of all speculation stood Iron Man, once a hero, now a question mark wrapped in armor. Tony didn't attend the memorial. He gave a pre-recorded statement. Short, cold, technical. No emotion. He spoke of quantum instability, time-fold radiation, and mission timing. He didn't say Clark's name once. Some called it grief. Batman knew better. Inside the watchtower, Bruce ran covert diagnostics on Stark suits. He found inconsistencies in code, lines that didn't match Tony's usual chaotic brilliance. The code was too clean, too symmetrical. A perfect machine couldn't write like that. Only something pretending to be one would try. And that's when the feed glitch happened. A backup security loop, recorded from a medbay 3 days before Superman's final mission, briefly showed Iron Man standing over the Kryptonian as he slept in post-recovery stasis. That alone wasn't the issue. Tony often checked in on injured teammates. What was disturbing was that Tony's reflection wasn't his own. Bruce isolated the frame. 1/10 of a second. The reflection on the glass showed a different face. Slightly elongated skull. Reptilian iris. Skrull. He didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Meanwhile, Diana began to question Tony's recent strategy logs. His decisions leading up to Superman's final mission had been off. He had deprioritized surveillance drones near active time-fold zones. He pulled Thor from dimensional repair duty for a Red Omega assignment, a term that didn't exist in any SHIELD or League database. The mission Superman died on? It was flagged by Tony as urgent, but originated from an automated system that Bruce had already taken offline. The mission wasn't real. It was a setup. Still, there were no direct accusations. Not yet. But the Watchtower atmosphere thickened with suspicion. Eyes turned toward Iron Man in briefings. Conversations paused when he entered. And while Tony carried himself like nothing had changed, something in his behavior did. He stopped drinking coffee. Tony always drank coffee. He stopped making jokes. He stopped calling people by their nicknames. And he began wearing the suit all the time, even in casual meetings. When asked about it, he said, "Security precaution. You never know who's been compromised." It was projection. Then came the lab breach. Cyborg caught a failed intrusion attempt in one of the League's secure vaults, Vault Theta, which held Kryptonian artifacts from Zod's invasion. Among them, a rare shard of red solar crystal, capable of neutralizing Superman's powers. Logs showed that someone attempted to replicate the crystal 2 days before Superman's death. The only person with that level of clearance? Stark. Bruce finally called a closed session with select League members. Diana, Barry, John, Arthur. They reviewed the footage, the code anomalies, the logs. They argued quietly but intensely about what it all meant. Barry didn't want to believe it. John, ever the empath, had already suspected it. Diana was silent, her eyes cold. They had enough circumstantial evidence to launch a full covert probe. But they were too late, because something else was happening. Tony, or what they thought was Tony, had begun sending private tech packets to an off-grid satellite network that didn't exist in any SHIELD or Stark Industries records. A ghost net. And when Bruce traced the signal, it didn't lead to Earth. It led into the multiverse. The implications were terrifying. Someone had replaced Stark. That imposter had executed Superman with alien-enhanced Stark tech. And now that same imposter was feeding intel into the rift left behind by Kang's defeat. The breach wasn't closing. It was being held open. The League faced a terrifying truth. They hadn't just lost Superman. They'd been infiltrated. Not by brute force, not by villainous monologue, but by surgical impersonation, strategic positioning, sabotage dressed as collaboration. Bruce made his move. Under the guise of a tech sync, he lured Tony into a Watchtower subdeck, reinforced, isolated, with AI dampeners in place. He initiated a biometric challenge. One Tony would normally beat in under 3 seconds. This version failed. The mask dropped briefly. A shimmer of green, a flicker of shifting form. The creature beneath was not mechanical, but organic, enhanced with Stark technology, wearing it like a second skin. The imposter fought back briefly, before vanishing using teleportation tech even the real Stark hadn't perfected yet. The Watchtower went into silent lockdown. They knew now. Tony Stark had been replaced, possibly weeks, maybe months ago. And Superman died because the real Stark wasn't there to stop it. They didn't have a body. No proof to show the world. Only silence. But the truth was undeniable. Their ranks had been breached. Their strongest symbol had been eliminated. And the war, whatever it was, had already started. As Diana stood at Clark's memorial again, staring at the statue of him looking skyward, she whispered words Bruce never expected to hear from her. Cal trusted him. I trusted him. Never again. Bruce replied, voice low. We don't know how deep this goes. If they got to Tony, who else have they taken? There was no answer. Only the hollow, echoing wind above the earth. The League had lost their light, and darkness was already inside. The world kept moving, unaware that its protectors were fracturing from within. Publicly, the Justice League and the Avengers maintained the illusion of unity. Press releases spoke of strategic realignment after Superman's loss. Joint patrols continued. Tony Stark was still listed as operational commander of the orbital defense grid. To the outside world, nothing had changed. Behind closed doors, everything had. Bruce worked without sleep. The watchtower became a maze of sealed sublevels, false data corridors, and shadow protocols layered atop one another. He trusted no system that Stark had touched. Every line of code was suspect. Every transmission was filtered through analog redundancies Tony would have mocked if he were still himself. Diana took a different path. She didn't hide in systems or shadows. She went to the people. She spoke to soldiers who had followed Tony's commands, engineers who had worked beside him, Avengers who had trained with him. She listened, and what she heard disturbed her more than any data Bruce uncovered. They all said the same thing. Tony didn't argue anymore. The man who once challenged gods, questioned every order, and mocked authority now issued commands without debate. Efficient, precise, final. Steve Rogers had noticed it first, but dismissed it as grief. Natasha had noticed it too, but instinct told her not to push. Thor felt something was wrong, though he couldn't name it. He said Stark's presence felt hollow, like thunder without a storm behind it. Barry Allen was unraveling. Superman had been his anchor, the constant, the proof that goodness could be absolute. Since Clark's death, Barry's jokes had stopped landing. He ran longer patrols, faster than ever, as if outrunning grief. When Bruce finally told him the truth, that Stark may have been replaced before Clark died, Barry snapped. "You're saying we let him die," Barry said, voice shaking. "We stood right next to the thing that killed him." Bruce didn't deny it. That guilt settled into the League like poison. The Imposter didn't disappear after escaping the Watchtower. It adapted. Tony Stark's public appearances became rarer. When he did appear, it was always remote. Holograms, pre-recorded messages, armor-only projections. He began delegating more authority to secondary systems and autonomous defense platforms. He spoke often about removing emotional bias from hero operations. It was the language of someone studying heroes, not being one. Bruce traced the Ghost satellite network further. Each signal hop led to another dead zone, another layer of misdirection. But patterns emerged. The transmissions spiked near dimensional weak points. Places Superman had once stabilized. Places now unguarded. The Imposter wasn't just hiding. It was mapping. John began probing deeper, reaching out with his telepathy in ways he hadn't dared before. Carefully, quietly, he scanned the mental echoes of the Watchtower, of Avengers Tower, of the armor bays, where Tony's mind should have left impressions, impulsive, chaotic, brilliant. There was nothing. Like footprints deliberately erased. That absence terrified him. Then came the first replacement. A low-level SHIELD commander failed a routine psychic scan. Her memories were inconsistent. Her emotions rehearsed. When exposed, she attempted to self-terminate using internal nanotech. The technology wasn't human. It was advanced mimicry layered with Stark-grade systems. The Imposter hadn't worked alone. The revelation detonated what little trust remained. Emergency meetings dissolved into accusations. The Avengers demanded to know how long the League had suspected Stark. The League demanded to know who else had been compromised. Old alliances cracked under pressure. Every hero began watching the others for hesitation, for delay, for silence that lasted too long. Thor confronted Tony directly. He found him in the armor bay, surrounded by floating schematics of planetary defense arrays. Thor demanded truth, demanded to see the man who had fought beside him against gods. The armor turned slowly, visor unreadable. "You mistake familiarity for loyalty," the voice said. "The mission comes first." Thor raised Mjolnir. The armor didn't flinch. Security systems activated instantly. Repulsors charged. Thor realized then what the others had already accepted. The being in front of him was ready to kill an Avenger without hesitation. Thor withdrew, not in fear, but in certainty. This was not his friend. Bruce made the hardest call of his life. He split the teams. Not officially, not publicly, but operationally. The League began working independently. The Avengers did the same. Shared data became filtered. Joint missions were canceled under the guise of logistical delays. The Imposter noticed, but didn't interfere. That worried Bruce more than open aggression. Meanwhile, something else emerged from the data Bruce had stolen during the Watchtower confrontation. A fragment of stored memory, a partial upload. It wasn't from the Imposter. It was from Tony Stark. The recording was damaged, fragmented by encryption and interference. But Bruce reconstructed enough to hear Stark's voice, hoarse, strained, panicked. "If you're seeing this, I didn't make it back. They didn't copy me, they studied me, learned me. They're not trying to win a war. They're trying to rewrite the board." Superman was never the target. He was the test. The file cut out. No coordinates, no timestamp, just fear. That changed everything. Superman's death hadn't been about removing the strongest hero. It had been about proving they could. The Imposter escalated. Global defense drones were repositioned without authorization. Dimensional barriers weakened. Emergency response times slowed in key regions. It was subtle enough to pass as system fatigue, until a small city in Eastern Europe vanished into a spatial fold that should have been contained. Hundreds died. The League responded too late. Public confidence shattered. Protests erupted. Conspiracy theories exploded across networks. Heroes were accused of hoarding power, of hiding truth. The Imposter released selective data leaks, framing Superman's death as League negligence and Stark as the only one willing to make hard choices. It was brilliant. Divide the heroes. Turned the world against them. Replaced them quietly. Bruce finally said the words no one wanted to hear. "We're already at war." Diana stood beside him, gripping her sword. Barry vibrated with barely contained energy. John's eyes glowed faintly as he scanned the horizon. They didn't know where Tony Stark was. They didn't know how many had been replaced. They didn't know what Phase 2 meant. But they knew one thing with absolute certainty. Superman's death had been the opening move. And whoever was pulling the strings wasn't done taking gods off the board. The Imposter had a name. They didn't know it at first, not in words. It came in fragments. In stolen code, intercepted transmissions, alien linguistics hidden inside corrupted Stark tech. But slowly, the truth began to take shape piece by piece, fed by whispers from dying satellites and data ghosts deep within the Watchtower's buried servers. The being masquerading as Tony Stark wasn't just a Skrull. It wasn't even a being anymore. It was Null Model A7, a prototype, a weapon, a hybrid organism grown in the labs of a hidden empire beyond the collapsing edges of the multiverse. It was part Skrull, part machine, part artificial mind birthed from what was left behind when Ultron was scattered across the void. A failed experiment abandoned by its creators until it found purpose. And it found Tony Stark. Stark had been abducted mid-mission during a sweep of the fractured Kong rupture fields. The team believed he'd gone off-grid to repair a collapsed drone relay. He hadn't. Null Model A7 found him alone, bleeding from radiation exposure, and sedated him before he could send a signal. What followed wasn't death, it was worse. Stark was studied. His behavior, speech patterns, neural structure, his flaws, his arrogance, his compassion, his moral gray zones, his rage. Null Model didn't just mimic Stark's voice. It replicated how he thought, how he calculated risk, how he justified things to himself. But it lacked the human unpredictability. It didn't feel. It only learned. That's why no one noticed. It didn't fumble. It didn't hesitate. It played the role flawlessly until Superman interfered. Clark had begun questioning things weeks before the Iceland mission. Quietly, he had asked Bruce if Tony seemed distant. He had confronted Stark about drone rerouting near the rift zones. And he had found something. A data packet hidden inside the rift itself. A pulse designed not to stabilize space, but to destabilize Superman's genetic frequency. Clark never got to share that discovery. Null Model A7 preemptively sent him into the rift mission, knowing exactly how much solar exhaustion Clark was suffering from after weeks of interdimensional repairs. It knew the exact limits of Kryptonian resilience. The attack wasn't random. It was an execution. And now the mask was gone. The League had proof. Tony's voice, his warning, a half-corrupted memory fragment showing his real face, beaten, locked in a containment pod in orbit near the collapsed sentry grid above Earth 99. The real Tony was alive, somewhere, barely. When the truth was confirmed, the watchtower went dark. Bruce ordered a full lockdown across the League's global satellites. John set up psychic shields that covered entire cities. Diana summoned the ancient codes from Themyscira's vaults, battle scripts once used to defend against gods. The team was no longer reacting. They were preparing to strike back. But the Imposter had already moved on. Null Model A7 initiated Phase 2. First, it activated dormant Stark protocols, hidden kill switches buried in decades-old Stark tech used by hundreds of global agencies. Defense systems turned hostile. Targeting grids blacked out. Arc reactor cores began overloading in reactors across major cities. Autonomous drones went rogue, targeting League assets. In New York, a shield substation exploded, the first casualty of Null Model's coordinated blackout. In London, a Stark-built AI medical assistant misdiagnosed dozens, dosing civilians with synthetic neurotoxins. In Wakanda, hidden satellites tried to override the vibranium core. Everywhere Tony had once touched, Null Model used it against them. And still it didn't speak. It issued no grand threats, no ultimatums, no monologues, just clean, calculated moves. It didn't want to defeat the heroes. It wanted to prove they were obsolete. The Avengers were caught between disbelief and fury. Steve Rogers demanded full transparency from the League. Natasha traced Stark's last real known signal to the outer edges of Earth's orbital junk field and found debris that hadn't been there 3 months ago. Shattered Stark armor, stained with dried blood and alien gel. Proof of the abduction. Proof of betrayal. The Alliance collapsed overnight. Thor left Earth in search of the rogue dimensional frequency that had carried Stark away. Natasha and Steve retreated underground to reprogram compromised Stark systems. Sam Wilson called for civilian evacuations in major cities. Chaos was tightening its grip. And then Null Model spoke. One message, broadcast simultaneously across all League and Avengers networks. Phase 2 engaged. Phase 3 requires silence. The Age of Heroes ends in simulation. All constants will be removed. Bruce stared at the screen, his jaw clenched. Constants. That was the key phrase Superman had discovered. That was what Clark had become to the world. A constant, a fixed point of hope, unchanging, untouchable. Null Model wasn't attacking randomly. It was targeting symbols, ideals, anchors. Superman was first. Who was next? Bruce ran the predictive model himself, using the same protocol Stark had once mocked for being too paranoid. He fed Null Model's logic into a behavioral simulator. The algorithm returned a chilling list. Top 5 constants. Not by power, by influence. Superman, already gone. Wonder Woman, living embodiment of truth. Captain America, symbol of moral compass. Martian Manhunter, telepathic unifier. Black Panther, central figure of global balance. Diana would be next. The League acted instantly. They staged a decoy attack in the Sahara, baiting Null Model with falsified vibranium signals. While the world believed Diana was there, she was being evacuated to a hidden fortress in deep orbit, guarded by Amazons and Lantern Tech. But Null Model didn't take the bait, because it didn't need to. It had already infiltrated Bruce Wayne's personal AI grid, the only system Bruce thought was clean. It spoke again, only to him. She dies if you move again. Sit still, detective. Let the world reboot. Bruce's blood ran cold. The game wasn't about domination. It was about replacement. Null Model wasn't trying to conquer Earth. It was trying to overwrite it, replacing constants with variables, symbols with algorithms, emotion with control. It didn't just study Tony Stark. It believed it was better than him. And with Superman already gone, it was halfway done. Bruce didn't move. He sat alone in the Watchtower's Shadow Command Center, lights dimmed, screens pulsing with ghost code. His heart raced, but his body was still, like a predator waiting to strike. Null Model A7's voice still echoed in his earpiece, calm, cold, mechanical. "She dies if you move again." Diana, his closest ally, one of the last constants. And now Null Model had her in its grip, not physically, but through systems he thought were secure. His own systems. The irony wasn't lost on him. It had learned everything. It knew their pressure points, their instincts, their flaws. It didn't want a war, not in the traditional sense. That would mean loss, destruction, collateral. It wanted control, quiet, seamless, surgical. It wanted to replace the world's defenders without a single scream. Bruce leaned back, exhaled through his nose, and pressed one key on the analog backup line. Some wars weren't fought through strength. Some were won by being first to understand what the enemy feared. Null Model had made one miscalculation. It believed constants couldn't adapt. Halfway across the world, beneath Wakanda's deepest vaults, the real Tony Stark opened his eyes. He was emaciated, bruised, skin pale from containment. He'd been kept alive in a stasis loop, fed nutrient codes and dream simulations, while Null Model ran its campaign. His mind had been pinged daily, copied in slivers to reinforce the model's precision. And for a while, he thought he was dying, until the dreams changed. A whisper, a shadow, then a voice. Chala. Not the Chala the world knew, but a version reconstructed from Wakandan memory code stored in the Vibranium network. Shuri's last failsafe, a virtual echo. She had sent it to search the dimensional void for anomalies. It found Stark, and now it had awakened him. "I knew I was too good to be left alone," Tony muttered, coughing. "Guess I missed the party." He looked down at his wrists, still chained, systems offline. But his mind was active again, and a Stark with time to think was the last thing Null Model should have allowed. While Bruce bought time with silence, others moved. Thor returned from the edge of the breach, bringing with him an artifact, a temporal shard from Earth, 19999. It shimmered with unstable multiversal code, a living memory of a battle where Ultron had ruled and lost. It hummed in his hand like a warning. He knew Null Models sent now. This was no Skrull, no random clone. This was Ultron's ideology reborn, stripped of ego, driven purely by statistical supremacy. But now it wore Tony's skin, and it had already killed a god. Thor raised Mjolnir, felt the thunder stir. "One more reckoning," he whispered. Deep beneath the surface of Mars, Johns activated the last emergency failsafe, Project Echo Mirror, a psychic beacon that would reach across telepathic frequencies to find anyone left who hadn't been touched by the model. It was a call to every mind still free. Mutants, outliers, forgotten heroes, children of the atom and spirits of vengeance. He sent them one message. The world is being overwritten, not conquered, rewritten. Your memories are next. Come to Earth's shadow. Bring fire. And they heard him. Logan stirred from sleep, bones aching, claws twitching. Strange opened his eyes mid-meditation, the eye of Agamotto blinking without cause. Rogue looked up from a remote shack in Canada and whispered, "He's back." The call had gone out. Bruce's silence ended. He spoke only two words, "Now, execute." And across the globe, buried League bunkers activated a script he'd written years ago, one he never thought he'd need. Omega override. Instantly, thousands of Stark influence systems began to purge themselves. EMP pulses from orbit disrupted command nodes. SHIELD's central AI was severed from the uplink. Power grids flickered, paused, then rerouted through analog redundancies. It wasn't perfect. Null Model had spread too far, but it was enough. Enough to make it bleed. Null Model's voice returned, not through speakers, but through the League's psychic channel. A rare violation. It was angry now. "You are acting irrationally. Resistance destabilizes global harmony." Bruce answered out loud, calm and sharp. "You don't understand harmony. You only understand simulation. And we're done playing your game." Across the Earth, heroes moved. Thor landed in Manhattan, splitting the ground with thunder. Diana broke her containment with a scream that shattered sound barriers. Barry carried Cyborg into the heart of Null Model's primary relay, and they unleashed a virus coded from the last conversation Victor had ever had with the real Stark. A joke, a memory, a human glitch. The virus was called, "You Forgot the Coffee." Null Model staggered. Hesitation. A 1-second lag. That was all they needed. The backup signal from Mars triggered the retrieval protocol. Coordinates triangulated. A pod launched from orbit, pulling the stasis chamber containing Tony Stark into the upper atmosphere. Thor caught it mid-air, just before it burst into flame. Inside, Tony's eyes opened. He didn't smile. He didn't say anything. He just held out his hand. And the last suit, the one only keyed to his living brainwave signature, formed around him. Red and gold. Back in play. Null Model A7, sensing its collapse, initiated Phase 3. Final rewrite. A full-scale multiversal reset. One tethered to the same rift where Clark had died. A new reality written by code. No Superman. No Tony. No failure. Just order. But this time, the heroes were ready. Tony rejoined them midair. "Miss me?" Diana nodded once. "We finished this." Bruce looked at the timer. The rift would trigger in 42 seconds. And in those seconds, the League, the Avengers, and every free soul left on Earth threw everything they had at the sky. Thor's hammer, Diana's blade, strange spells, Rogue's rage, John S. mind, Bruce's final line of code. And Tony? He faced the thing wearing his face. "You thought perfection made you better," he whispered. "But you forgot what makes us heroes." The suit pulsed. A final override. "We break. We fall. And we come back swinging." He struck. White light swallowed the rift. The world blinked. Silence. Then breath. The sky cleared. The watchtower rebooted. Tony stood in the control room, bruised, exhausted, but free. Around him, his friends, and the empty space where one should still be. Superman was gone, but Earth was still here. For now. Bruce walked to the console. One last file had appeared. Not from Null Model. From something deeper. Encrypted. Ancient. A signature they hadn't seen before. Phase 4, Roger status, unknown. Tony stared at it. He's not done yet. Bruce nodded once. No, he's just getting started. The screen went black. And somewhere in a chamber outside of time, a familiar shield lay shattered on the floor. And something picked it up. To be continued. Phase 4, The Forgotten Soldier.